All right, what's going on, everybody? Making a weekly recap video, I guess. This is going to be, I don't know if this is the first or the second one I've made, but I'm going to try and do these every week just to help hold myself accountable and make sure I'm paying attention to my trading habits and therefore I'll be able to, hopefully, I'll be able to better identify and correct whatever issues or errors I'm making. So this week was not a profitable week. I had every day that I traded was a losing day. Um, I had taken a little bit too much risk on my trade on Monday. I'm actually going to open my Excel spreadsheet here and show you guys sort of where my trades were. So this was Monday's trade. The first trade I risked too much money for the account size. I definitely should have risked less than $100. But I felt like I saw the potential for a high time frame trending move on the Nasdaq, and I was wrong. On a positive note, I did follow my rules with my reentries. So first trade I risked $150. Had a little bit of slippage, and so that was my total loss 153. And then my reentry, I did cut my risk in more than half actually, which was good. Although the total amount I risked was definitely too much. And as you can see, I've been taking a lot of entries pre-market. I've been noticing occasionally during early pre-market, somewhere between 4 and 5 a.m. I'll see price reacting to a high time frame level. Like uh, here, this was Thursday's trade, early pre-market, and it started to get rejected here at this 4 hour fair value gap. And I took a short that was actually kind of perfect based on where the rejection started to happen. But and this is something that I've been coming across time and time again with my trades where I will try and trail my stop loss a little bit too soon and I'll end up missing out on the move, which clearly I did. I would have had many R's of reward here. Uh, but unfortunately, I decided that I wanted to trail and I need to make sure I wait for a little bit more displacement, wait for at least I'm making new rules as I trade, obviously, because I'm sort of working on developing my own strategy, which is probably the best way to go. And so I've created a new rule, and that is that I have to wait until I'm at least at a 1-to-1 profit level before I start to trail my stop. And I'm not going to trail it at break even. I'm going to trail it, maybe at a slightly lower high if I'm going short like I was here, and obviously vice versa for a long. But I'll continue to optimize that as I'm able to correctly uh, trade. Right, as long as I'm able to see my bias play out without being stopped preemptively, uh, I'm going to try and optimize for trailing that stop loss and in order to manage my risk a little bit better. So I did get stopped out early. However, my initial risk was about $60 or $70, and my total loss for that trade was actually only $29. So I missed out on the move, but I missed out on the move because I was trying to manage my risk, which at the end of the day, I do, that's still an error. However, looking back at the trade, it's much better. I would have much rather preferred to lose in this manner, where I'm losing in an attempt to do the right thing and protect my capital, versus losing because I'm getting greedy and trying to overtrade. So a mistake is still a mistake, and I'll make sure to try and be more aware of that in the future. And like I said, I'm creating new rules for my strategy and for myself as I notice my own tendencies. But so far on the account, I am down about $500. I am 4-11, which is approximately a 36% win rate, which isn't great. But as I start to correct for some of these trades, like this trade was me over trading, and I lost way more than I should have ever risked. This was just it was a conscious decision rather than impulsively risking more. But looking back, I definitely decided to risk too much for that trade. So I'm gonna make sure to stay a lot more consistent with how much I risk. That seems to be a lesson that I am forcing myself to learn over and over and over again. So this week was definitely not a good week, but there was a lot of things that I am now more aware of in my strategy and the way that I have been trading and my habits that I'll be able to identify going forward. So I'm looking forward to resuming my trades next week. And as soon as and the thing about this trade that it does bother me, of course, because I saw this gap up at the close, going from I think this was 4 p.m. to so Tuesday after the close and the open of Asian session, the market Nasdaq gapped up like over 200 points. And anytime you see these liquidity voids, as some people like to call them, they almost always get filled at some point over the next like 24 hours. I've noticed. And so, we saw it touch down with the daily fair value gap, but it still left this area right here where there was no price that was filled, or no candles that was filled, no structure that was established there. And so I knew that fill was going to be coming. And as soon as I saw this 4 hour rejection on this gap here, the short was in. And it was a very, very good entry. It was just the way I managed the trade. So managing I'm gonna have to try and adopt more of like a set it and forget it sort of thing. And this all sort of, in my opinion, goes back to accepting risk when I put a trade on. And the more I try and minimize how much I'm risking in that trade, the more likely it is that I'm going to get stopped out just because of the way that liquidity works. Because you'll have this initial rejection, and then it'll come back up to take highs. And if you try and trail at too closely to that entry, when one of these wicks is going to get you, which is exactly what happened to me right here. This was the wick, because I guess this was the high that I started to trail at, and sure enough, it swept those highs for liquidity in order for price to continue to push down. And I'm paying much more close attention to this as I watch price. Right, I'm anticipating these wicks a little bit more, and I'm just continuously being reminded that when you have a trade idea, it's best to allow that idea to play out, right? I keep coming to the charts and seeing the charts as like a problem that I want to solve. But in reality, I think the best mindset for me to have is to just look at a chart as, an experiment, right? So when I have a trade idea, I'm testing my hypothesis. It's an experiment, right? So I have a question is and being where is price going to go? My hypothesis being, my answer to that question, essentially what where I think it's going to go. And then, in an experiment, you have variables that you have to control. You have to have controlled variables. If you don't control your variables, under which you're testing your hypothesis, you're not going to be able to accurately measure your data. You're not going to be able to have a real conclusion, because what you were testing was not really consistent with your hypothesis and the way that you performed your experiment. And so that is to say, when I am during the course of my trade, I'm going in and trying to move my stop loss, or in other words, change the amount of the amount that I am risking in that trade. That's me changing one of those variables that I'm supposed to control for. And so going forward, like I said, I'm probably gonna try and stick to whatever my initial uh, risk is for my trade idea, at least until I see the trade move substantially in my favor. Right? Like if I am in profit, at least like I said, at least a 1-to-1, I'll start looking to trail my stop loss. But I gotta make sure that I stay consistent with where I am leaving it up until that point. So going into next week, that's going to be my weekly focus, is just making sure that when I put the trade on, that my stop loss stays where it is until I at least get a 1-to-1. And then on top of that, I want to really see price continue to respect the levels that and the direction that I am anticipating after I get to that 1-to-1. So it's going to be a learning experience. Obviously, there's a lot more for me to experience trading, and a lot more for me to learn as I'm keeping track of sort of my progress. And it's going to take some time before I uh, turn this account positive. Some of this, some of this might be my strategy, but some of this might just be me trading improperly. And so as I work on correcting those improper entries and work on managing it appropriately, I will be able to then actually gauge what my system can really produce. But I can't do that until I'm able to consistently follow that system. So that's going to do it for this week. I wish you all luck in your trades if you're trading, if you're not trading, if you're just watching this, looking to see what I'm up to. I hope you guys are all having a good day, a good week out there. And I will be back next week for another weekly recap. Hopefully, we'll turn a profit. But like I said, I'm sort of trying to foster a mindset of me viewing it at all as all just as an experiment, and I'm going to be testing my hypothesis when I enter the market rather than trying to engineer a conclusion, which is it's difficult. It's difficult to stick to your strategy when you're still developing it and you don't really know what it can produce. But the only way to discover what it can produce is if you are able to follow it consistently. So that'll do it, and I'll see you guys all next time.